our trust program, what we're here to talk about and highlight. And this program is so important. It's, as the organization, our board, we have an amazing board. We did our strategic planning back in 2020, and one of the programs that we've been really focusing on is this trust program, because with the way that public benefits are changing and the needs of individuals and the costs and the desire to keep individuals out in the community, the trust program is really an important program for the organization and for those we serve. And the organization has been working on securing our financial future, so we will be here for a very long time, and we feel it is so important that we do that for the individuals we serve as well. So just some really general special needs trust. It's a legal entity, a financial tool that manages the assets for the benefit of an individual, which is the individual with a disability. It also, the trust, when we start a new trust, Emily, our program coordinator, meets with families to talk about what does the trust need to be used for, how do we want to see those assets used, and how they get managed. And then it protects assets without negatively impacting current or public benefits, which is so important for the individuals we serve, so important that we're not negatively impacting their benefits. And then the other piece that I always like to talk about, because this is a growing concern, is that it makes sure that this valuable asset that either parents, grandparents, or the individual themselves finds themselves, that they do not get taken advantage of financially. It protects these assets to make sure that it is for the sole benefit of an individual with a disability. And we have many, many stories over the years where unfortunately we have worked with individuals who've been taken advantage of financially, and putting this trust tool in place is such an important part of making sure that their asset is protected and it's for their sole benefits. So a couple of facts about special needs trust that I know Mary always likes to share, and I'm sure many of you who work with your loved ones' benefits know this very well, but as little as $2,000 held in the name of the individual can impact them from their public benefits. And this can also lead to loss of their long-term care benefits, which is really important, the service side, the long-term coordination piece of it. A special needs trust is really designed to supplement a person's basic living needs, and we often talk a lot about what this trust does is it really gets to individuals' quality of life issues, the things that allow them to really be out and active and participating in the community. And I think for families and caregivers, it really provides peace of mind for their future and knowing that these assets are protected. And then it allows families to create a plan, a unified plan for their loved ones. I know someone earlier already had a question about how does ABLE work with the special needs trust, and I know Elizabeth is going to address that, but I think of it as like a public-private partnership. How can we take people's benefits, and if there's a small amount of assets, how can we put that together to really impact individuals' lives? And we see great things happening when we have that working in unison. And then what is so important to us, because this is really the heart of the organization's mission and why this Life Navigators started and why these programs continue to grow, is it really gets at individuals' quality of life. We love to see people travel. We've had people access music therapy. We have one individual that we served for many, many years that we lost this past year. He was very near and dear to us, but because of his special needs trust working with his long-term care, he did not need to spend one day in a nursing home or an institution. And that meant everything to us. And we know that would have meant everything to his mother, who set up a special needs trust and named us as guardian. So that's what the planning and trust can do for individuals, and it is so impactful, and we are so pleased to be a part of it and working in unison with families. So just a couple notes about, we have a trust handbook for all of you. You'll see this highlighted in the handbook. So when we hear some of the terms, the beneficiary is the individual with the disability who's benefiting. The settler is the person who actually sets up the trust, and we have a variety of parents, grandparents, siblings, etc. The trustee is the financial institution that manages the assets. The trustee for all of the Life Navigators account, we are so fortunate to work with Nancy and Victor and Prairie Trust. They are an amazing partner. No one is more knowledgeable on special needs trust and distributions than Nancy. She's an amazing resource. And we feel so fortunate for all of our accounts that we have this amazing partnership working together. When we have, tricky issues or how does that impact, and I've seen Mary and Nancy in action working with families and the questions and the way they just help them problem solve. So it's an amazing partnership to have their advice and counsel. And then the personal needs advisor is named in the trust, and these are the individuals that communicate with the trustee and life navigators about the beneficiary's needs and what some of the desires. And so even if families set up a trust one, which will be funded at the future, Emily is still going to come out and meet with families, talk about how the trust eventually will be funded and what may be some of the needs and future planning. And then obviously when someone has an active and ongoing trust, we're there to help guide distributions. And some of the things that we do sometimes, which is really unique, is sometimes we see individuals aren't always taking a lot of distributions, so we can help strategize like how you can actually use the trust to improve your quality of life. So how a special needs trust is funded. So we have two different types of trust. So the third party trust is always a third party, parent, grandparent. Things can, life insurance, a will, your estate planning, contributions from friends and family. So the asset is always coming from a third party, and that is our trust one, our community trust. And then we have our first party trust, which sometimes is known as a self-settled trust, where the cash or the assets are from the individual, the beneficiary, the individual with the disability. We're seeing these often funded because an individual with a disability may have gotten a personal injury settlement. We've had a number of individuals that were in minor accidents being transported to work and day programs, so they find themselves with this assets. Sometimes for individuals, when they apply for benefits, they may not qualify right away. But if you file an appeal and you go down the road, you may get, individuals may get a lump sum. So these are things that will fund that first party, which is our Trust 2 and Trust 3 trusts. So we have two options based upon individuals' needs. And I will say that we often have individuals that have a Trust 1 and they have a Trust 2. So we have an individual or family put aside, they did their long-term care plan, they put aside a Trust 1 that will be funded in the future. The son was involved in an accident, had a personal injury settlement, so they ended up setting up a Trust 2. And in most cases, and Elizabeth may highlight this, people will ask, well, what should we use, Trust 1 or Trust 2? Usually we advise people to use Trust 2 because that is going to be subject to the Medicaid payback. So utilize that Trust 2 first, and then you can move to the Trust 1 at the time that it's needed. So multiple options to meet multiple needs. We get these questions a lot. What can a trust fund? So it's really designed to supplement public benefits programs, but we have people using them for rec, camp, social activities, entertainment, cable, phone, internet. The wonderful thing, once a trust is funded, Nancy will set up regular distribution. So for some of those regular ongoing bills, you don't have to submit every month. It's automatically paid out by the trust. Transportation is always a huge issue, so transportation, communication and technology resources, which are so important to the individuals we serve to enhance their ability to communicate. Non-covered medical and dental expenses, therapeutic programming. I mentioned we have a lot of people that love music therapy, and some of those, and equipment needed. And then in-home services and care providers. So for the individual that I talked about who meant so much to us, we utilized his trust for some one-on-one aid that allowed him to remain in his home, which was amazing. And then we always encourage for prepaid funeral expenses. That's just a really important part of the futures plan, that all of that is in place. And again, kind of highlighting where we talked about why this is so important, that these disbursements are for the sole benefits of the beneficiary, which is so important for so many reasons. So there's a couple, of course, limitations, and there's always a little quirks when we're working in public benefits, but there are some limitations. So Social Security Administration does have special rules regarding the special needs trust. Particularly, we want to be particularly careful if individuals are receiving SSI, and so you have to be careful about not using it for rent, mortgage, sometimes utilities, heating, basic living needs, and then the one thing that we're always very, very careful is we never We want to be very careful about ever making cash distributions directly to the beneficiary, because we, of course, don't want to impact their public benefits. So, but I do know this team here, they always find creative ways to make sure that distributions are really for individuals' needs. So just to talk a little bit about Life Navigators, we're very fortunate in the state of Wisconsin that we have 2 trust options. Some of you may be familiar with WISPAC. They are based out of Madison. WISPAC was started by a number of elder law attorneys in the state of Wisconsin, and so they offer a similar trust program. And then we have Life Navigators, so we're really one of 2 major organizations that operate a special needs trust. And some of the things that make Life Navigators Trust a little bit unique is that number one, the trust is really a much more affordable option for individuals and families. Most families could not set up a standalone trust. They're just, because of the financial need, the financial amount would not be possible, and so Life Navigators fulfills a role for people of all asset size, which is really important. It allows families to be involved without the weight of responsibility. When we say the weight of responsibility, what we're really talking about is making sure that distributions don't impact their benefits. If there's change to the trust code, all of our trusts get updated, and so it's those technical pieces that take a weight off a family, making sure, what if I do something wrong? What if I make what if I give my son or daughter an asset and now all of a sudden I'm getting letters, my benefits are cut off? It eliminates that, but allows families to still be involved. What does the trust need? What can the trust be used for to benefit my loved one? So I mentioned already, Life Navigators, over 70 years of service to the greater Milwaukee community. We're a trusted partner in delivering this service. So our first trust, Trust One, started back in 1980. So we started this many, many years ago because a lot of the families that we work with, some of them founding families, wanted a tool for their loved one with a disability to secure their future. So Trust One has been operating since the early 80s. In 2000, the Trust Committee started working on it in 2007, 2008, and Elizabeth and some of our other trust committees were instrumental in adding Trust Two, because we did see a growing group of individuals with disabilities that were finding themselves with their own assets. So we needed to do that first-party trust. So we expanded to Trust Two in 2019. That was approved by Social Security Administration. And then in 2017, again, because these trusts, Elizabeth wrote a Trust 3 document, we added Trust 3 for 65 and older. And that got approved by Social Security Administration in 2019. And so we feel like as a program, we have multiple options that can meet every individual's needs. And so it's so important that the program has grown based upon the needs of the individuals we serve. Again, I mentioned we serve as trust managers, so we process distributions, we look at everything, making sure it's not adversely impacting individuals' benefits. We help provide guidance and assistance. The one thing, this program has grown, so we're so excited that we have a trust team. So we have Mary Till, who's our program director who heads up the team, and then Megan Murray, our program manager, who oversees our trust and guardianship and our information, education, and advocacy program. And then we have Emily Wheeler, who's our trust program coordinator. So she's working directly with beneficiaries, processing distributions, going out and completing assessments. So we have a whole team of people at the organization that are there to help families with their trust and planning. In some cases, we can also serve as the personal needs advisor. Some families name a family member, but if something would happen to that family member, they would ask Life Navigators to step in that personal needs advisor role. Again, it's about us getting out, seeing the person, figuring out what their needs are, and helping guide the trust. I mentioned Emily. She's going to come out and do a comprehensive assessment after admin trust is signed off. So when it goes through the process, your attorney develops the trust. It comes to Life Navigators, we sign off on it. It comes to Prairie Trust. Everything is a go, and this is any of the trusts, 1, 2, or 3. It does not have to be funded. Emily's going to reach out. She's going to schedule a time to come out and meet with you and do what we consider an assessment. Talk about your loved one, what the needs are, what you hope for the trust. If you have any unique planning issues, she will be out there to meet with you. And then I think these last two are why we feel the Life Navigators Trust Program is so comprehensive and important, is that it's the connection to other services that Life Navigators offers to individuals with disabilities. WISPACT is a great tool. Wisconsin is lucky to have it, but they do not provide any other ancillary services to individuals with disabilities. So Life Navigators' mission is to provide an array of services to individuals with disabilities. So very often, when we meet with individuals around the trust, we identify, hey, they might be interested in our men's group, or do they like the arts? Maybe they want to come to a large group event. Do families want to meet with other families? They could join with Coffee Connections. We're thinking about guardianship. We're not sure. Can I connect with their guardianship coordinator? So it's really the other services that we feel we're able to wrap around individuals. If someone who we're working with in trust is crisis, we will get out and see that person. It's that piece that really, I think, differentiates Life Navigators from the larger WISPAC trust that serves the state of Wisconsin. And then you can see with Adam, we have an amazing board of directors. 51% of our board is made up of family members that have loved ones with a disability. The board is very actively involved in really all aspects of the organization. We have a number of committees that look at our finances, our resource development, our trust committee, our special events, etc. And we also have just an amazing trust committee. These are individuals, Elizabeth is on the trust committee, of course, but these are individuals who are attorneys and financial planners, that this is what they do. And they give up their time to serve on the Life Navigators Trust Committee. So they are always looking at our trust tool, whether or not changes or updates need to be made. They can look at unique distributions. They set policies and processes in place. And so they meet 6 times a year, and Prairie Trust is involved in those meetings. And so as an organization, our board and our trust committee provide that oversight, expertise that really have helped the organization move forward and be able to impact more individuals than ever. So I talked kind of scattered briefly about the different trust options, and this is all in your trust handbook, and obviously you have the copy of all of the trust slides, but just kind of mentioning again that we have the 3 different options. We have the Trust 1, the Community Trust, which again was the one that we formed in 1980, and then Trust 2, the Pooled Trust, and then Trust 3, the Pooled Trust for 65 and older. And so you can see we added in the handbook kind of a chart that kind of lays out what are the differences. So as families are thinking about what trusts and what can be used to fund it, what when does funding need to happen, if there's age requirements, what happens to assets upon the death of the beneficiary. So I might just talk briefly about this because I think that Elizabeth is probably going to cover it a little bit, but our Trust 1 Community Trust, there is no Medicaid payback provision because these are assets that are coming from a third party. So it's really the settler's choice to determine how the assets will be distributed at the time of the beneficiary's death. So we often see families will leave it to another family member, they'll leave it to an organization or a charitable group that they're working with. We're delighted to say we are seeing more families than ever leave Life Navigators as a named designated beneficiary as a small portion. So this Trust 1 allows you to determine that. So Trust 2 and Trust 3 are subject to the Medicaid payback provision. So at the time that the beneficiary passes and the trust no longer, Nancy does a review. She works with the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Wisconsin does their Medicaid payback provision. So that is a significant difference between Trust 1 and Trust 2 and Trust 3. And that is why we try really hard. We never want to commingle funds. We never want third party and first party assets to get commingled. Very, very, very important. And that's why we have the multiple trust options. How the dollars are invested, Nancy's going to talk a little bit about that, but Prairie Trust is responsible for investing. Even though we're a community trust, pooled trust, each beneficiary still has their own account, which is important for people to know. And then our fees, did we include the fees in the trust handbook? Yeah, so the fee schedule is in the handbook for you to review and look at the fees. So just an overview and kind of helps families kind of look through. trust options. So I know Mary wanted to just share some general information about the number of trusts that we're working on. So currently we're at 381 trusts. We have about 40% are funded, and the remaining are unfunded, which is amazing because we'd love to see people planning for the future. And as I mentioned, one of the things that makes us unique is that we can administer and work for trusts with a variety of values. Many, many years ago, I remember meeting with a family and they were just like, they did not consider themselves to have the type of assets for a trust. And with a little bit of planning, so many people can be impacted. A small amount of assets makes a huge difference in an individual's life, especially when those assets are protected. So our lowest value trust right now is 1,000. Our highest value is 1.5 million. And you can see the median average of Trust 1 is 83, Trust 2 is 42, and Trust 3 is 80. And that fluctuates. We have larger trusts coming in, we have smaller. It's just a range, but I think it's just, Mary wanted you to see the number of trusts that we're working with and just the wide range of trusts that we support. So I had a chance to visit with a couple of you, and I have to say I'm impressed. So many of you are already active in your plan. You have a lot of things in place. And so for those that are just getting started, happy you're here. And it's really about thinking about what you want for your loved one, involving your loved one in that decision making, identifying a team of people to work with, financial and legal professionals. We do have a referral for attorneys. I don't know if we included that in the handbook. But certainly reach out. We don't particularly endorse anyone, but we do have a large listing of attorneys that specialize in special needs trusts, guardianship, etc., that we can certainly get out. And then start meeting with your financial and legal professionals. Any of the new trusts, an instrument of adoption needs to be completed, which is the document that gets signed. And then Emily will come out and meet with you. But we always like to tell families, if you're in part of this planning process, you are welcome to call us at any time. You do not have to work with a Life Navigators Trust to call us and access our services. And so we often mention to families, you're welcome to call us even before you start with the attorney. If you have questions like, how would a trust work with my son or daughter's family care, or they're on Iras, that service piece. So we are happy to work through any of that even before you actually have a formalized trust. We meet with lots of families who are thinking about planning. We are more than happy to come out to you. You're welcome to come to our office. We're trying to get out and obviously do more presentations to start getting families information. So please reach out if you have any questions, and it doesn't matter at what point you are in your overall planning process. Yeah, so that concludes my comments and notes about the Life Navigators Trust Program. And we actually, I think it's most important to hear from a family that has been impacted by Life Navigators work. So Mike and Rita are here, and I'm so excited. I've heard about them for so very, very long. What a wonderful family. This is my first time meeting them as well, so I'm delighted to hear their comments. And they have been working and planning for their son Chris's future. And they are involved in the Life Navigators Trust Program, but I know he's also gotten involved in some of our other programming. So I'm going to invite Mike and Rita to join us. Thank you so much.
Our journey with Life Navigators started with St. Coletta. Chris went to St. Coletta for a while, 4 or 5 years? And if you're not aware, it's a school that is mainly students who have special needs. And so Bill Kane is the principal there. I think he's still the principal. And he had a meeting sort of like this. And what we did was we went and heard all of the people from various agencies. And so we went right away to go and talk to the people from Life Navigators. And then we went away for a while. Vicki was talking about that. Then what we did, Chris was old enough, or was needy enough, that we applied for SSI. We were approved for SSI. He was still young, And then a few months later, they send us, the SSI people sent us a letter that said he wasn't eligible. We had to pay back all the money that they had given him. And we were like crazy. What are you talking about, right? Yeah. And so then right away, called Mary Till. Mary, help us. You know, and she was just amazing and gave us all the things. Okay, so we got into Social Security, and then there was the whole business of where our trust could be. We set up a trust, and there was still a law on the book somewhere in the Wisconsin statutes that said that any money in the trust could not be added to the money that came from the state. It would impede that money, and they would cut off our state money, our Social Security money, if we did this trust. Well, that was wrong. And Mary really entered into the whole thing. There was somebody who was holding up the change to this law. And so we were so lucky to have Life Navigators to help us work through that. And it survived. We also had some issues with getting a team, because the first people who helped us with the team were, we were going to talk about this? The family care. And we had a wonderful team leader. He was wonderful, but he didn't know anything about young people. He didn't know. He was mainly servicing seniors and helping them to get into nursing homes. And so that wasn't what we wanted. Go ahead, Mike, what were you going to say? Okay, anyway. So one more thing. Okay, so we really, then we had another set of luck with Lisa, who I don't think she's here. Lisa, are you there? Lisa is a member of the board of Life Navigators. She came to a meeting and said, does anybody need, I have a client who needs a roommate for her son. And we said, we'll take him. And it's worked out wonderfully, but that's because, again, of Life Navigators and the connections and the things that we have gotten from them. Chris is very involved in lots of things. He loves the bingo night, because if you get bingo, you get some prizes, gift cards. He loves that. Anyhow, so we've had a very positive experience. They have so much knowledge about these things. And finally that law changed. Oh God, that was so wonderful. That we didn't have to worry about whether our Social Security would be cut off if we had the trust. Because that was a right. So anyhow, I just gotta keep going with this.
Yeah, so as Rita mentioned too, we're just very happy to have a Life Navigators team now that works with our son through My Choice Family Care. And so we're kind of connected in a variety of ways. As you mentioned, we attended a trust presentation similar to this. We met with them and decided they recommended a lawyer to us who was very helpful. We set up the number 2, the pooled trust number 2. When both of our boys were very young, we started putting money aside in EdVest for them. As Chris got older, though, it became clear he probably was not going to go to college and use that money. And if you know anything about those EdVest funds, if you take the money out and you're not using it for education, there's pretty severe penalties to pay for that. We were able, with the trust, to transfer that money that we put in an account and had grown over the years until by the time he was 18, we were able to take that money and transfer it into the trust without a penalty. And that really formed the basis for his trust. The trust has also been useful at times, although it's very rare, where he starts to get to that limit of $2,000 and he doesn't have expenses. So we occasionally put excess money into the trust fund. We also then have used it at times to reimburse. Usually we will front the money, and then Nancy has forms. We fill out forms, we request a reimbursement and document it, and then she sends us a check for reimbursement. But we've used the trust fund to cover fees for his reading classes at Cardinals Ridge, or for summer camp, for some medical expenses, or when he needs a new iPad because he spends so much of his life on that iPad. The other one was getting old. So if there are money that is not available in what he calls his special money, his Social Security money, then we've got that there as a resource to draw on. to cover those expenses. And for us, it's also just a source of comfort to know that the trust is there, that it's being well managed, and that someday when we're not around, we're getting older, we have to face that reality, that the Life Navigators is there to manage the account, to advise our son Joe, whoever helps to take over it, and to really be there to be sure Chris is all right. Just the fact that the trust is at Life Navigators, that his family care team is at Life Navigators, that they know people because he takes part in bingo and some of the extracurricular activities, etc., gives us a lot of comfort. That's all.
So today I'm going to talk about who Prairie Trust is, what do we do as the trustee, and how do we invest the funds that are in all of the Life Navigators Trust, and how do we make distributions for our loved ones, our trust beneficiaries. So Prairie Trust is a division of Waukesha State Bank. Waukesha State Bank was established about 77 years ago. We are a community bank. We were founded by the Taylor family. Ty Taylor is third generation president here on the bank side. The trust department, actually, we will be celebrating, I think, our 50th anniversary next year. So that's exciting. We are going to be moving probably end of January, February. So we have bought space on Stone Ridge Drive in Pewaukee. So we have been growing over the last 8 years. I've been here almost 8 years now. And so our assets have tripled in size. And so have our staff. So we plan to move. So you will all probably be getting notices that our new location. So Prairie Trust is the trustee of Life Navigators Community Trust, Trust 1, and also 2 and 3. We have been serving Life Navigators as trustee for over 15 years. We are here and committed to serve those with individuals with disabilities. We help preserve their government benefits, help improve their quality of life, and meet those cash needs. As a trustee, we have several responsibilities, so this is not all inclusive of our responsibilities, but we are held to a higher standard, a fiduciary standard. We need to act solely for the benefit of the beneficiary, the primary beneficiary. We have legal obligations. We have to assume legal responsibility for all the proper trust administration, so we need to follow that trust document. So you all have the handbooks that were given to you, so we have to make sure we follow all those rules that are outlined in that handbook. We have to understand public benefits and keep up with the changing rules. So I need to know the differences of the rules when a person's on SSI, Medicaid, SSDI, Medicare, long-term care programs, HUD housing, Section 8 housing, food stamps, SNAP benefits, all that we need to keep up with those ever-changing laws. So, and if needed, we can seek legal counsel if something comes up where Mary and I are really unsure and think that we need to get legal counsel. We will talk to Elizabeth and get her opinion on that. So we do all the accounting and administration. So when the assets come in, the assets are purchased into possibly a variety of mutual funds, exchange traded funds, which I will get to that in a minute, but we provide all the principal and income accounting. So with those assets are generating income and dividends, capital gains possibly. So we are reporting all that for your loved one's account, and we are providing quarterly statements and annual statements to the beneficiary if they are competent, if not to their power of attorney or their guardian. So, and then we also do all the processing of the payments out of our office. So all the disbursements do get processed out of our office, checks, ACHs, whatever the case may be. As Vicki had pointed out, we do not give the beneficiary any cash. We always make payments directly to the vendors. We do have a TrueLink card that I'll talk to you about in a few minutes that we can utilize too, that allows the beneficiary to have a card to go buy certain things. So we don't give that cash directly. We handle all the tax information here, so we have to do all the tax reporting on those trust accounts. So for our trust funds, which is our third-party trust, we actually have to prepare a complex tax return. And if the beneficiary receives any distributions out of that trust, we do have to provide a K-1 where they will have to pick up that income, dividends, possibly capital gains on their personal income taxes if they meet the criteria to have to even file a personal income tax return. For our trust 2s and 3s, we provide them with a grantor return, a 1099, and that beneficiary needs, again, to pick that information up on their personal tax return if they meet the filing requirements. So all the tax information is completed out of our office. We have to keep all our, again, documentation. When did we buy those assets? When did we sell them? So cost basis information, acquisition dates, that is all kept and recorded in our files. And then we provide the investment management. So we're going to go through that here in a minute, but we determine the investment strategy and invest those funds into a certain strategy. So that takes me next to the investment process. So for our small accounts that are below $10,000, if it is a trust fund, a complex trust, we will invest the money in a money market because there is a $600 exemption, possibly even a $4,300 qualified disability exemption that we can take. So that money, if it's less than $10,000, we invest in money market. For our trust 2s and 3s, if it's less than $10,000, we leave it uninvested in cash. And the reason we do that is because for the tax information, there is a tax cost to do that tax preparation return. So for the 2s and 3s, that's a $200 fee. So if we would invest, say the $10,000 or $15,000, and it generated more than $10 of income, we're needing to charge the trust $200 for that tax return. So that doesn't make sense to us. So that's why it's left uninvested. For our mid-size accounts, which are between our $10,000 and $50,000 in size, we do invest the funds into a Fidelity Balanced Fund. The Fidelity Balanced Fund is made up of about 70% equities and 30% fixed income. That fund has done amazing. I think it's close to any new investors. So we're lucky that we got in and started using it many years ago. So the year-to-date return as of 9/30 is 10.85%. For 2020, the rate of return was 22.43%. The 3-year average was 14.7, and the 5-year return 13.72. So to me, that fund has done phenomenal. It covers all the trust expenses that you're paying, Life Navigators, ourselves, and then there's excess there that there is growth in that account for past history. Then for our larger accounts that are above $50,000, we actually have 5 different models that we utilize. We call them our passive plus models. So we have from conservative to aggressive. Our aggressive model is about 90% equities, 10% fixed income. The growth model is 75% equities, 25% income. Moderate growth is 60% equities, 40% fixed income. Most of our beneficiaries fall into that moderate growth model. We have income and growth, which is 40% income and 60% equities. And then our conservative is 20% equities and 80% fixed income. So how do we determine which model is best suited for our beneficiaries? So we look at several different things. We look at the time horizon. What is the age of the beneficiary? How old? If they're younger, then there's more time for the account to grow, compound, pay distributions out. Longer term horizon, maybe it's going to fall more in that moderate to aggressive growth area. So what are their needs? What kind of distribution flow is going out of the trust? Are we, paying, phone and cable? Are we paying possibly caregiving costs that Iras or family care do not cover? Travel expenses, just different things like that. So we look at what are the distribution needs, and then the asset size determines also how we're going to invest, and what is the risk tolerance. Again, conservative, moderate growth. So our investment department will determine what model is best suited based on the information that our office provides, which Emily does that assessment. So when she meets clients, she's asking what those distribution needs are and figuring that out. And then Autumn, who is my assistant, which is here in the front row, she actually does an internal risk assessment form that asks a lot of questions that I review, and then it goes to our investment department, who actually then determines what of those 5 different models, if it's over 50,000, that it belongs in. Our models are made up of exchange-traded funds on the equity side, so ETFs. We use iShares and Vanguard for those. And then on the fixed income side, we use bond mutual funds, Baird, Fidelity, Dreyfus, different funds like that. So that's how the makeup of our funds are. We do have an investment committee, so it's not just one person deciding what funds go into each model. So we have an investment committee that is made up of our investment team here at Prairie Trust, but also bank financial people, officers that make up the decisions what to utilize. So they're constantly monitoring those mutual funds and exchange-traded funds. One of the tools they use is called FI360. That is a resource that analyzes all those funds and determines, if it's in the top 25% based on asset size, tenure of management, expense ratios, things like that. So the funds are constantly being reviewed. Each account, though, is reviewed on an annual basis. So I will do an administrative review, and our investment team will do an investment review specific to that account. Because today, the strategy may be moderate, but over time, if there's more distribution needs, it may need to turn to be a conservative portfolio. So we will review it on an annual basis. The funds do get rebalanced on an annual basis too, so the account will be rebalanced. We actually do hold some specialty assets. So if your intentions is that your loved one, stay in a home or possibly a condo, we do hold residential property in our trust. We have 2 full-time real estate administrators here that handle all of our real estate property. So they will take care of the maintenance, going out, making sure that plumbing's working and so forth. So they actually go out on an annual basis to do an inspection, but do handle all that maintenance and hire the people that are needed to keep the property up to date. We also will purchase vehicles for some of our loved ones. We actually take a lien on the vehicle, so the vehicle would be held in either the beneficiary's name if they are capable of driving, or possibly a parent. But then there is a lien put on the vehicle, so that way if it is ever sold or say an accident happens, and that those proceeds come back into the trust. We also do have inherited IRAs. So a lot of times when a loved one, a parent is handling their estate plan, a lot of wealth is usually possibly in an IRA. So we do have and handle inherited IRAs. So that IRA, the beneficiary, the Life Navigators Trust would be listed. So a person could have 2 accounts, the trust account and then the inherited IRA. And if they are determined that they truly are disabled, the inherited IRA with the beneficiary being disabled, we can do life expectancy payments for required minimum distributions. And so that required minimum distribution then would transfer into that trust on an annual basis. So the 10-year rule would not apply to that beneficiary if they are determined to be disabled. So that's a positive thing. And so we do manage IRAs also. And they would be invested similar to the trust. Now I'm going to talk about distributions and our disbursement guidelines. So as Mike and Rita pointed out, that there is a disbursement form that would need to be completed. That disbursement form then also includes supporting documentation. If it is say a phone bill, a cable bill, something that is recurring every month, that form only needs to be filled out once. And then you can either fax, email, mail that phone, cable bill, or you can actually change the address and have it go directly to Life Navigators, because all distributions do get reviewed by Life Navigators first, and then they come into our office for the secondary review, and then payment is made. So we do process once a week at least, sometimes twice. So we know we put in our guidelines 10 business days, but we do process weekly, and on some occasions it might be twice a week. We're not, if the payment is due the 15th, we're not going to wait until that weekly processing, if we process on Mondays, we're gonna get it out the door right away, and Emily will send it over to Autumn and have that processed immediately. So, when we look at distributions, and part of our decision-making is, whether or not to approve that payment, we're looking as is it for their sole benefit? Is it violating the sole benefit rule? Are they wanting possibly to buy a gift for a friend? Well, that's a violation of the sole benefit rule, so we would have to decline something like that. Are the funds adequate? Is it prudent? What are the beneficiaries' needs? We want to make sure the trust can last as long as possible. And then any disbursements that are over $25,000 in a calendar year do go through another review by another committee. So that's more like when it comes to vehicles and so forth, that has to go through another layer for approval. But those are the things that we look at. We typically don't decline any distributions. We may trim back if, someone, we've had clients want a new camera. Well, you just got a brand new one 2 years ago. We spent $3,000 and now you're wanting a whole other one. Is that prudent? Probably not. So, and sometimes we compromise on dollar amounts too. So, but most of the time, all the distribution requests get approved and move forward. So, who can receive the funds? We talked about that. We don't pay the beneficiary directly. We want to pay the service providers directly. The personal needs advisors can get reimbursed if they make payment on behalf of that beneficiary. Advocates, guardians, power of attorneys can get reimbursed for goods and services on the beneficiary's behalf. I had mentioned the TrueLink card. So the TrueLink card we've been using for probably about 4 years now. And for loved ones that have a little more independence and they're needing a little bit more monthly support, we can actually load money on that TrueLink card, and then they can go buy, clothing items, maybe get their nails done, put gas in their vehicle. It's not meant for everyone, so we do have probably a dozen or so clients using it currently. We load money on every month, and that way they can go make their purchases. There is a $10 monthly fee that TrueLink charges for that service. We are able to restrict things, so we can restrict them from shopping at stores that sell food, because if they're on SSI is meant to pay for food. So we can do some restrictions so they, can't go to restaurants because restaurant meals are part of food. So we can restrict that. Liquor stores, casinos, different things like that we can restrict, so that way they can't utilize it at all places or even online purchases. We've had one customer or beneficiary who actually had a credit card, and so she went and charged $800 of magazines. Okay, that would not have happened with a TrueLink card because it's preloadable. Where a credit card you have a limit, so this comes handy in these kind of cases. So, and I already talked a little bit about reasons why things may be denied. If they're wanting a gun or drugs or alcohol, we have paid for CBD oil, so that is a growing thing that is very helpful to a lot of beneficiaries with their pain needs and stuff. So that is something that we will pay for, but requests as far as guns, drugs, alcohol will be denied. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. So as Vicki had pointed out, it's important to start early for figuring out for your loved one their life care plan, getting the people in place, such as financial advisors and life navigators, a trust, case managers, anyone that is important in that loved one's life, to bring it all together to make sure that when you as a parent, that has a loved one, that if you pass away, that your child will be well taken care of, and it'll be a seamless process.
I'm actually going to skip over the Special Needs Trust for a little bit and talk about the ABLE Act, because I do get a lot of questions about this, and why can I just do an ABLE instead of a trust? What does the ABLE do? Those kinds of things. So those of you who've never heard of ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And real quick, I'll give you the history on it just because I love it. So there was a senator in Virginia who had a neighbor who was Down syndrome, and she was complaining to him about how she wanted to save money, and she wanted to have a job, and she wanted to be more like her friends and be able to go out with them, and that she was restricted by that $2,000 and she couldn't have any fun, she couldn't do anything. And he thought that was unfair. He didn't know anything about special needs trusts. So he put forth this legislation on the IRS side, and it passed through, and so now we have this ABLE Act and these special needs trusts. So the ABLE Act, what it does is it allows for individuals to basically save money. You're allowed to put in $15,000 per year, and in a disabled person's case, it's up to about $100,000 max. If you go over the $100,000, you would lose benefits. Under $100,000, or if you go over your $15,000 in a year, you could lose benefits. So it's tied to the gifting rules. Remember, this is all under the Internal Revenue Service rules, so it's tied to the gifting. And because it's also under the Internal Revenue Service, it has different rules. It's not necessarily as restricted as Social Security, and which is looking over those special needs trusts, because all the special needs trusts exist under the Social Security Administration rules. So we're over here under the IRS side. So the ABLE accounts are online accounts that you set them up similar to if you go on, I know there's advertisements on TV for different, I don't know, like USAA, what's another one that's online? Yeah, but it's set up very similar to an EdVest or like a 529 account. In fact, that's kind of the model that was used, is that 529 account. And as a consequence, then it manages itself, it looks like that, it's easier for administration. However, it isn't as easy to set up as a 529 account. Not all investors can just do an ABLE account for you. You have to go to a state that has one. Wisconsin does not have its own ABLE account. We were in the process of getting one started, and in the budget process at the time, it kind of got nixed. We do not have one. There is talk and push again to try to get another one into Wisconsin, but it is not finalized yet. I know I've had a lot of people who have questioned its legitimacy because Wisconsin doesn't have one, but please don't let that deter you. Just because we don't have one doesn't make it a good tool. We are allowed to use any other state's ABLE account, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, etc. There are some states, though, where you have to be a resident of that state to use it, so we can't use all of them, just the ones that are open to everybody. They are, other ones with them, yes, so the cautions also, it's, again, 15,000 is your max. Also, unlike a special needs trust, you can only have one ABLE account. So you can have, so grandma can set up a special needs trust, grandpa can set up a special needs trust, divorcing parents can each set up special needs trusts. For ABLE, you can only have one. So between everybody, if everybody's contributing it to it, again, only 15,000 a year. So that is one of those things that's there. It also does not take the place of a special needs trust because it has a payback provision. It does not matter whose money comes into it. It has a payback provision at the end of the individual's life. So when we talked about what gets used first, the special needs trust or the ABLE account, we're going to use the ABLE account first. The ABLE accounts, one of the things I wanted to bring up to you, because they've been doing some regulations because Social Security kind of got a little bit hurt. That's the best way to put it. That there's this other program out there, and that it's allowing people to do things that it won't, for housing, for example. That you can use the money out of ABLE to maybe pay for housing, where you can't do it out of Social Security money. So there's some little wiggle room that we have a little bit. So I also wanted to let you know that within the final regulations that have recently come out, a lot of individuals had already set up accounts for their kids. I think you mentioned you had Edvests for your son. So there are individuals out there who have those college savings plans set up for their kids because they're not sure when they're little whether or not after they're 18 if they're really going to be able to go to college, if they're going to be able to manage. You don't know what that extensive disability is going to be. So there is an ability to transfer those 529 college savings plans into what's called a 529A ABLE account. However, that transfer or that rollover will sunset in 2026. So that's kind of important to know if you know anybody who has those, that after 2026, there will be an impact and there will be some penalties potentially after 2026. So we need to roll over or fix them. ABLE also, you mentioned the TrueLink cards. ABLE is usually associated with a type of TrueLink card as well. And you can, from ABLE, put the money onto that preloaded account. It's very similar. The individuals can use their money to go and pay for whatever they want. They can go then to the movies. They can have, especially for our higher functioning individuals, they can have more independence with that. And it's really beautiful to see. We can also have some coordination between the Special Needs Trust and the ABLE account where money can go back and forth. We talked about that limit. What if the ABLE account is getting too much money? You shift some money over to the Special Needs Trust too. Because this is all because of the payback provision, we have to use the Trust to individuals' money, even though the ABLE account may be funded by grandma and grandpa. Once it's in the ABLE account, it's deemed the individual's asset, and so you have to keep it within that trust too. But there can be some coordination back and forth. Also, if we needed to, if it was something that Nancy thought would be handled better, she could move money from the trust into the ABLE, and then that ABLE account could then pay for other things. We also have individuals with disabilities who have jobs, and their income from their jobs can be directly deposited into their ABLE account as well. So there's a lot of really good uses with that and some coordination here. All right, I just want to kind of go over the difference one more time. I know we've gone through it, so I won't spend too much time on it, but what the difference is between the two types of disabilities or Social Security. So when I am counseling somebody and I ask them if they have a disability determination, and they may say yes, and I'll say, well, what kind? And they don't always know what I'm talking about. Do they have DI or do they have I? Do they have AI? There's a couple of different kinds of disability determinations. SSDI has some special pieces to it. Of course, there's a disability. The Social Security Administration has said you have a disability. But it's based either on your working history. So for most of us in this room, if we have worked long enough, then we have points, if you will, set aside for the Social Security Administration that if we become disabled, we can get some of our Social Security money back out. When you get your Social Security statement, or if you look at it online now, it'll tell you if you become disabled how much you would receive a month. That's that disabled. A person who is disabled can also receive off of their parents' working history. So they can qualify for Social Security based off of their own disability and off of their parents' work history. So they can be what we call dual eligible, which allows them to receive a little more money. SSDI, there is no restriction on assets. So they can have whatever they want to have in assets. Where they're restricted is really on their earnings. So they can still work, but the thought is, of course, that if you're disabled, you can't work. So you're only allowed to make, I think it's like $900 a month or so is what it is. So it's not a lot, but you can still work. And of course, if you're under 60, here's the thing with Social Security, they just automatically assume that you're disabled after you're the age of 65. That's the way I put that. So once you're over 65, everybody's pretty much on the same kind of disability. There are some minor exceptions occasionally, that after age 65, everybody's on that regular type. So most of your family members, though, are dealing with the SSI when they're over 18 and you're trying to make sure that they have their benefits or that they're determined disabled. You're going through the process to get SSI, where they find a disability. And this one is that restriction on income and assets. So in order for the government to give them some help, there's that $2,000 limit in Wisconsin. Some states are less, some states are like $1,500. Some are much worse than us. Some are better, some are worse. But $2,000 a month that you can keep in your account. And I'm going to say that because if money comes in and it goes over the $2,000, that's okay as long as it's gone by the end of the month. So some of my clients are in this horrible routine of constantly spending on junk food and clothes and trying to spend this money when they don't need to do that, when there are special needs trusts and those ABLE accounts where you can take that $2,000 extras and just push it off. And I have a little lady that I do that almost every month. I'm constantly sending like $300 to $700 because I can't spend it all. She's in a group home and now she's on hospice, so I can't do anything with it. So I have to send it to her special needs trust to keep it there. There are, of course, we've talked about that a lot, food and shelter. Right? Those are the restrictions. And people, well, what if I just keep the money under my mattress? No, that's fraud. What if I take it out and I put it in my own account? That's still, taking it out, and is it for that individual's benefit? No, you can still get in trouble for that. So please be careful with when you do that. If you're messing with somebody's SSI, you really need to have a strong paper trail. Okay? All right. How do they affect people? So Social Security, there's a few beneficiaries out there whose mom and dad, you're well off. You do not ever expect your kids to ever be on benefits. They will have insurance for life. They have enough money. One individual I know of right off of my head, this kid already inherited, I don't know, like $600,000 or something crazy. That he's living at home with mom and dad, and he's not going to need that money right away. So his parents are not expecting him to receive Social Security, and that's okay. I still usually ask individuals to get the disability determination if they need it, because it is that benchmark for whether or not they can receive, or if they need to receive, the Social Security from the parent in the future. You have to have that. And also, if they needed to establish an ABLE account, it's still a good idea, even if you're not expecting to get the benefits, to still get the disability determination. Medicaid. Okay, Medicaid is a big umbrella for all kinds of services. A lot of times people are thinking about nursing home. When they see Medicaid, they think nursing home. So you also have to think about the Medicaid Title 19 is Badger Care. Things you've never heard of, like KIT, COP, SLIMBY Plus, Quimby, MAP. You might have heard of MAP. And then you have Iras, Family Care, all of those community waivers, PACE, partnerships. So it's a big umbrella for all of those programs. And they all have a few differences in how they're administered and what their requirements are. All of them across the board, well, no, not Badger Care, I guess, but the $2,000 limit is something that we're looking at. We are also looking at whether or not the person has to pay a little bit towards their own care, or like MAP, maybe the person has to pay a premium for their insurance. Maybe they're only getting card services, which is just the medical benefits. So Medicaid is a huge term. HUD is a pain in my rear. HUD has, when you go for housing, there's an application and they have to look, and your rent varies based upon what your assets and your income are every year. Unfortunately, when there's a distribution from a trust, it doesn't matter what it's for. It can be for a medical expense. If there's a distribution from a trust, HUD treats that as income. And so any distribution that comes out from that special needs trust can cause an individual to have their rent raised. It's a mess. There's really not a lot of ways to get around that, because even, I talked about how the trust can work with ABLE, and we can move some money. We're moving money, we're making a distribution, we still have that problem. So it's something that I'm hoping gets fixed in the future, but right now, individuals who are on low-income housing are going to be affected. And so that's something that they might need to know going into this process, that yes, they're going to be affected, but they do have the assets to pay for it. So maybe sometimes we talk about some budget counseling so that they can learn to budget based off of what they're giving. VA benefits, that's a whole other situation. There's some different rules with VA. The VA rules more closely resemble, since 2018, they more closely resemble the Medicaid benefits, so there's that. But the VA does count a special needs trust as a resource. So you're not, unlike Medicaid, where you can move the money and it no longer counts, the VA does count special needs trusts towards your overall asset picture. So that's the biggest thing to be aware of. I think I kind of talked through a little bit of those. If you have some questions on that later, we'll grab that. I can talk all day, so I don't care. Okay, first party trust yeah, so this is why you use a pool trust. This is why you would use WISPACT, or you would use Life Navigators, is the Social Security reviews. We are in a region of the United States where our Social Security Administration looks pretty hard at trusts. And for good reason. Our government needs money, and they're looking for places to get it, and usually the easiest way to get it is from people whose voices are smallest. That's my opinion. I'm sorry. So when they look at special needs trusts and they see where people are setting aside this money, they're like, well, there's money set aside. Should they really be entitled to that? Let's go look at those trusts and see if any of them are violating the sole benefit rule. Is any of this money coming out to the individual, has an ability to get to the person's hands in any way, shape, or form? And we have a lot of old attorney-drafted forms out there that these trusts were set up in futures planning, like in the 90s, and if those come up and get funded, a lot of them get rejected, or they get flagged. You get those nasty notices from Social Security saying we want your money back. And those people with those attorney-drafted forms have to go hire an attorney, have it looked at, amend the trusts. That might be through a court order, but have to have it amended and send it back to Social Security to figure out if they fixed it or not in order to solve the problem. A pool trust, like Life Navigators, we get one beneficiary who gets a negative notice, and we all pounce on that. We look at it, we figure out what the problem is, and we fix our master trust. So we fix it one time for everybody, and it happens fast. So you have an advantage of not having to, we talked a little bit about family members having to know how to do the job and how to be the trustee. With Life Navigators, they can be family members. They can just watch out for their siblings. They can watch out for the kids and not worry about this administrative stuff, or if something's going to come up like that, because if you get a nasty letter, you're going to give it to Mary Till, or you're going to give it to Nancy, and we're going to work together to get it fixed. And then I'm going to work with the trust committee. We're going to figure out what language we need to fix it. It'll go to the board of directors, and we'll get it fixed. That's what happens. The trustee knowledge, I just kind of touched on that. So, a lot of my clients like to list their kids in birth order on everything because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Like, that's not necessarily the best way to go, because your firstborn might be really terrible with money, or be very involved with their own family, have their own issues, might not be local, might be military, you name it, there might be problems. Pool trust, they can check in, they're going to get statements, they can call Mary or Nancy or Vicki and say, I have this concern, and they'll get it taken care of without having to worry about the beneficiary and what's going on with them. I already kind of talked about those common problems. It can also come up with just the age of the document can be a problem. The trusts that we see, we had some trust updates in 2014 to our trust code, and so some of the older trusts might be a little bit obsolete in some of their powers and things like that. And if somebody did a fix it and forget it estate plan, they might not have everything up to date. Yes, so we already talked about that. Supplements a person's care. My clients use it a lot for dental. Medicaid dental is terrible, so we use it a lot for that. For travel, to be able to do some things that they want to continue to do. I have a little lady, I already mentioned her, but I use her trust. She's 102, okay? And she incidentally was the first person who used our over 65 trust. She was our test case. And she's so sweet. She doesn't need a lot, but her armchair broke and the spring was poking through. So I used the trust monies to buy her a new armchair. Her phonograph broke and she loves big band music, so I bought her a new phonograph. She had a clock that her husband had given her for their 25th wedding anniversary and it broke. I was able to take it to a clockmaker and get it fixed with trust money. These are things that $2,000 a month would not have been there to give her. So I was able to supplement that. Also, she's had a couple of really good birthday parties on top of that. We were able to get for her 100th birthday like a 4-string, it was like a small big band that came and it was fantastic. But anyway, so it supplements the person's care. A lot of my clients are still under the impression that they have to disinherit a disabled individual because that's the only way to keep them from losing their benefits. That is not the case. You do not need to disinherit them. If it is inherited into that trust, that first-party community trust, third-party trust 1 community trust, there's no payback to the state. When the individual passes away, it goes on to the family or to whoever you've designated. If it's their own money, there might be that payback. The state only gets their money if there's enough to pay them in full. So which is another reason why they're looking at these to try to break them, is that they want some of this money. Especially with WISPAC. WISPAC has grown very, very, very large, and they do not have those ancillary services like Life Navigators where we can put it directly into programming. WISPAC has had to create some pieces to put their money into to help disabled individuals in Wisconsin, so they're trying to develop some programs right now, so they're a little behind the 8 ball over there, but the state's looking at that and they're like, there's money there, we'd really like it. But they don't get any money unless there's enough to pay them back 100%. But some of our disabled family members have been on benefits since they were born. There's never going to be a way to pay back the state for all of that. So at their death, then instead of paying back the state, it will come back to Life Navigators and it will be used for these other programs and services. And it has been used to buy transportation vehicles, funeral planning, some crisis services, lots of things like that. And again, we already talked about not everybody is a trustee. Oops. There's something else I also wanted to talk about. Just on the guardianship side, I had somebody just come up to me and ask me about an alternative to guardianship through the supported decision-making tool. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this. This is something pretty new in Wisconsin. I haven't used it a lot. I've only used it in contested guardianship cases where maybe we had a case where the person was high functioning and may be able to do some things themselves. So supported decision-making is a legal tool where the individual names their team to help them with finances, with medical, with all of these other things. They name the people that will help them. And it's a legal document that basically bypasses HIPAA and it bypasses some of the power of attorney kinds of things. It's like, these are the people who can get this information and help me out. I tend to find it more as a supplement to, if it's already a higher functioning individual, they should do powers of attorney and then maybe have this document. If a person needs a guardian, they need a guardian. There's still some problems with Social Security, I will say. When people can do powers of attorney, that Social Security is harder for the parents to work with than when they have a guardianship. I don't know why, I don't think it's appropriate, but there are some problems there. But the supported decision-making tool that is out there can be a really great way if you have a very independent person who is disabled to help them feel independent and maybe to relieve some of the, if they have some anger against being controlled or anger against being told what to do, that you're like, this is up to you. You put together your team of people so that it gives more independence.